I've got a question from Matt here, but before I read it out and answer it, this is going to be the last podcast in my unique style series for now. We'll go back to slightly more normal service where I share some of my own progress and what's been going on with my albums and 1,000 songs, because a lot's happened. The reason that this is the end is that I'm about to start, just in a few days, the next Make an Album with Mike group, where we will be making a unique album. And I've redesigned a new program, a brand new program with new music games, new exercises, new thinking exercises, all focused on helping you develop your unique style while also making an album. So the structure of the program remains the same, but what's in it is going to be different. And obviously what I aim to do with my podcast here is deliver as much free help as possible so that you can do it on your own. But if you want to get my personal help, we meet 2 times a week for 3 months. If you want the accountability of a group, if you want the certainty that that creates and the support that you need to develop your unique style, and you'd like to have an album at the end of it, then I'd be very happy to help you. All you need to do to find out more about it is send an email to mike@makemusicyourlife.com, but you're going to have to hurry because we're starting in just a few days. So anyway, let's get on to Matt's question. Hey Mike, clear on the elements that I think comprise my unique style and splurging the guts out of it for the last 9 months since trying your method, which alone and of itself has improved my life and music and makes me very happy. So thank you so much. But I still never finish anything. Matt. So this is a very common problem, Matt. So please don't think you're alone. But the mistake that you're making is in the difference. It's like a conflict. It's a contradiction between your first sentence and then what you go on to say. What you say is, I'm clear on the elements that I think comprise my unique style. And then you go on to say, but I'm still not finishing anything. The fact that you are not finished anything means you cannot be clear on the elements of your unique style. Let's use an analogy. I like analogies in this situation. Right, so let's think of an analogy. Let's think of cooking a meal. Okay? If you are just splurging with various different elements, then what I would liken that to is you're simply preparing the ingredients, right? You're not really cooking a meal. Yeah? You wouldn't know if a new meal you were trying to make would work without finishing it and having somebody actually eat it, without eating it yourself, without trying it yourself, without giving it to other people for them to eat as well. So at the moment, you've chopped your carrots and you've chopped your onions and you've got all your spices together, and maybe you've even started like heating them up, doing a little bit of sauteing of the onions and a few, but you've got the separate parts all there. And yes, splurging them together is the first stage of the process, but in terms of knowing what is actually going to work, in terms of truly developing your unique style, there is no way of doing that without finishing music. Remember, if I go back to the little model that I shared with you a couple of episodes ago, there'll be a link in the show notes for the episode where I shared that. I've put a link to the entire playlist of all the unique style podcasts that I've done. So the model is vision, play, and synthesis. Now, those 3 stages, vision is what you think you want. So yes, you have been doing some play in splurging, but you've not completed the whole process of finishing music, so you've not truly synthesized it. The synthesis step has to be about finishing music, partially about finishing music. Yes, there is a certain amount of synthesis that goes on in the early stages, but it's amazing what you cannot know until you finish a piece of music. It's happening with me with the album that I'm finishing right now. So the music that I'm making right now, number one, isn't exactly what I expected it would be in the splurging stage. And number two, I'm quite surprised at how it's turning out and what's happening to it. I'm not even sure I'm absolutely sold on what it is right now. But I do know it is uniquely me. So I'm going to finish it. I'm going to complete it. I'm going to release it. And then out of that process, I'm going to be able to review what it is and in some way react to it for the next round of splurging and discovering that I'm going to do. What you'll notice when you listen to a lot of great artists talk about the various different albums they make is that each album in some way is a reaction against the previous one. And the trouble is with only splurging and never finishing anything is that you don't really have anything to react to. You're just constantly trying things. You're never getting to the point where you can truly review what you're doing. Think of finishing a piece of music or finishing an album, which is how I prefer to think about it. So think about finishing an album in itself as an experiment. You run the experiment, and that experiment includes finishing it. No matter whether you think it's the best thing or the worst thing that you've ever made, you finish it because you have then completed the experiment so that you can get the feedback. You have to complete the experiment to get a result. You get feedback from that result, which then means that you can change or alter course from that feedback, which then allows you to do another experiment so that you improve and get closer to something that is compelling to you, something that you really want to do. So probably what is going on, Matt, is that you are expecting or wanting the piece of music, the music that you finish to be in some way the idealized version, the very best thing it can be. There is a truth here at the core of the creative process. You are never going to be 100% satisfied with what you finish. I would argue that if that is your goal, and if you do actually achieve that, then that is the death of your creative process. Because if you're 100% satisfied with something that you finish, then you've got nothing to improve. You've got nowhere to go. So if you want to grow throughout your career as an artist, satisfaction cannot be the goal. If anything, dissatisfaction is the goal, because that's the kind of feedback you need to grow. Remember, problems are the way. Problems are like next steps. So when you finish something, you think, well, I'm not sure about that. That didn't turn out the way that I wanted it to. Well, that is a next step that you can apply to your next album, your next piece of music. And if you just get stuck in splurging and discovering at the start, just in the idea generation phase, you're never going to be able to get that feedback. You're never going to be able to eat that meal. You're never going to be able to understand what you need to do next. And this is why I choose to develop my unique style through making albums. In the Unique Style series playlist, the second episode in there is one of the first episodes I ever did of this podcast, of my podcast, where I actually talked about the reasons that I'm making an album. And about 2/3 or something like that of that podcast is about me talking about developing a unique style. Because one of the things that creating albums does, working towards a specific project, even if you're not going to release the tracks as an album, even if you're releasing them separately, which is exactly what I'm doing, even if you're doing that, finishing specific projects with a specific deadline, it's like a forcing function. It means that you finish something. Even if you don't end up finishing a full album, it doesn't matter. You will have finished something. You'll have finished a lot more than you would have done had you not worked towards an album. So that's why I like to think about the music I'm finishing as albums, because there's a natural ebb and flow of the creative process. If I just simply think about all of my music as, right, I'm going to finish this track, now I'm going to finish that track, now I'm going to finish that track, there's no end to it. It's very grindy. Whereas if you think about multiple pieces of music that you're finishing at once. And this project has a start, a middle, and an end. The actual finishing process. So you start with idea generation, then you move on to more of the arrangement kind of stuff, more of the execution kind of thing. And then you end up in the final month with the preparation step, where you're preparing the stuff for release, the music for release. Then you're much more likely to finish something. So whether you choose to join Make a Unique Album with Mike or not doesn't matter. What matters is that you actually finish something, because you cannot say that you know what you want your unique style to be without actually finishing music. And making albums is the best way that I found in all of my 30 years of working in music to do that. So if you'd like to join Make an Album with Mike 6, otherwise known as Make a Unique Album with Mike, which is a brand new program focused on developing a unique style by making an album, then send me an email, mike@makemusicyourlife.com, and I'll send you all the details. We're starting this week, so if you are interested, send me an email. And with all that said, onwards and upwards.